Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be taking a look at the 2024 election and an ideal Republican dream landslide scenario victory for Donald Trump in the upcoming 2024 presidential election against Joe Biden. But before we get started, make sure you guys are subscribed as we are approaching 3,000 and click the bell so you don't miss out on any of my content. Also, we have memberships. You can find the links to that in the description section. And don't forget to click the like button and give this video a thumbs up. Now back to the topic of today's video. I'm going to be filling out the 2024 electoral map in a Republican dream scenario. So basically, what any Republican or Trump supporter in general would wish for in this upcoming election. So let's get started. But first of all, let's take a look quickly at Biden's approval rating. As of today, he's disapproved of by net negative 15.6% underwater in the negatives, and he's below 40% currently at 39.5%, which surprisingly is getting higher if you think that's low. And he's disapproved of by a staggering 55%. So this is actually not too bad for Joe Biden, as it was worse before, even though it's still pretty bad, which is kind of laughable. And just a little bit of an overview on Joe Biden's job approval on a number of these key issues that matters to voters a lot. Starting off with the economy, he's disapproved of by net negative on this issue specifically by 17. He's approved of by 41% on the economy, and he has a disapproval rating on this issue by 58%. And then you take a look at foreign policy, this gets even worse. He's disapproved of by almost a net negative 23% on this issue. He's only approved of by nearly 37%, and he's disapproved of by 59.5%, so almost 60% disapproved of in foreign policy. And then as for immigration, it's one of the worst, actually, if not the worst, by 27 points underwater. He's disapproved of by a staggering 60% on the issue of the border crisis, and he's only approved of by 33%, by far the worst out of any other issue. And then inflation is also pretty neck and neck, pretty bad with immigration at a negative 24 points. He's only approved of by almost 37, and he's disapproved of on inflation by 61%. A lot of people are probably poorer than where they were 4 years ago, but you can probably argue that the stimulus checks back in COVID really helped. But as for crime, it's one of the, less bad things for Biden. He's doing pretty good here. He's only underwater by net negative 14 points. And then this is pretty interesting. This is by far the worst, actually, other than immigration. The Israeli and Gaza conflict, he's underwater by net negative 30% on this issue. Horrible for Joe Biden. So that's a little bit of an overview on how he's handling some of these issues, and we have a debate right around the corner on CNN in exactly 5 more days from this video gets uploaded. So we take a look at the RCP average aggregate for Biden and Trump head-to-head. As of today, Trump is up, according to the spread, by exactly 1 percentage point. Keep in mind that this exact accurate underestimated the former president back in 2020. So if you were to apply the polling here, he's actually going to win it by much more. And even if Joe Biden were to win the national popular vote by 1 to 2 points, it's still not enough to win in the election, because Hillary Clinton won it by 2 points and she still ended up losing. So for Joe Biden to win, he would have to, it's a must for him to win the election by getting a popular vote percentage victory of over 2%, maybe even 3% if he wants to win re-election. So let's begin with the map, an ideal Republican dream election scenario for Donald Trump. Starting off with the likely states that are now moving into the safe column for Donald Trump. Iowa is now safe for Trump. A new poll had him up by 18, highly rated, accurate. Also, Ohio would also go to Trump by double digits. He would crack, 10%, I believe. And then as for Florida, this state's actually getting pretty interesting because this state is really shifting towards the right. You take a look at the 2022 midterms as a great example. Ron DeSantis won by nearly 20%. Marco Rubio cracked double digits, and Miami-Dade County flipped from blue to red into 2022 midterms. Especially Cuban Americans are really trending towards the right in this state. A lot of Hispanics are now shifting in favor of Donald Trump, or just Republicans in general. And even Texas, another border state, like I mentioned earlier, Biden is disapproved on the issue of immigration out of one of the most, other than probably the Israeli conflict. And with that being said, the border is absolutely a mess, and Trump's probably going to win Texas by like 10 points in an ideal Republican, dream election scenario. And I do think that even some usually typical solid Biden states that would go to him by like 20 points or maybe even 16, usually like back in 2020, would move down to the likely column, and it will narrow down the margins. For example, New York, I think it's now likely for Biden. A really new, accurate poll, I believe from Siena College and the New York Times, has Biden only winning the state by literally 8%. 8%, guys, come on. That is horrible news for Joe Biden. And don't even get me started if you say, oh, well, he's still winning it. Guys, 8% for New York, even though he's still winning it, come on. That's literally an embarrassment for Joe Biden. He won this by 23%, and now he's winning it by 8. And then as for New Jersey, I also do think that's now moving into the lean column for Joe Biden. In this specific scenario in which Republicans have an ideal dream election, I do think New Jersey would go to Biden still by like 5 to 6 points, as recent polling actually shows it within 5 to 7% within that margin of error, which is not good news for Joe Biden, considering that he won it by 16 points 4 years ago, and now all of a sudden, according to the polls, it's within 5 to 7 points. That is not good news nationally for Joe Biden. I also do think that would help Trump with the popular vote if he were to pick a VP like maybe even Glenn Youngkin or Lee Zeldin, especially with some of these solid blue states. Narrow with the margins, that would definitely help out with the overall national popular vote, especially in a state like New York or maybe even New Jersey as well. And a new poll, believe it or not, actually has Hawaii going to Biden by literally only 2 percentage points. And I know it might be a Republican internal, which is probably not the most accurate thing, but it still does not matter. It should not be within 2 points, guys. It went to him by nearly 30% 4 years ago. Like, come on. So Hawaii is now lean for Joe Biden, believe it or not. Keep in mind, this is just an ideal election landslide dream scenario for any Republican in general. This is not my actual prediction. I just want to point that out there. Even a state like Washington State would be likely for Joe Biden and any Republican, dream election landslide scenario, but I still do think states like Colorado and New Mexico would comfortably go to Joe Biden by a likely margin somewhere in between 7 to 10 percentage points. I just think those states are lost causes for Donald Trump at this point. I just think both of these states have really shifted too far to the left. They just keep getting bluer and bluer. I think it's really hard for Trump to overcome the votes in Albuquerque, New Mexico, a Democratic stronghold county. It's just seemingly impossible at this point. And then the likely states for Donald Trump in an ideal Republican dream scenario for this election is going to be Georgia, would be likely for the former president, as well as North Carolina. This state's getting a whole lot redder. A new poll actually shows Mark Robinson defeating Josh Stein in the governorship by literally 4 points, and Trump's expected to outperform him. So Trump's going to win the state by over 4 points if that poll is actually right. And majority of polls actually shows Trump having strong leads in the state of North Carolina. As for Georgia, this state's pretty interesting because Biden won this 4 years ago for any Democrat the first time since like Bill Clinton, I believe, by a margin of 0.2%, roughly 10,000 votes, which is extremely narrow. So considering that the margin of error for Biden was just so like low or little, I just don't see him winning it again. I think Trump should win that by roughly 5 to 6 points, a likely margin, and any Republican landslide dream, I would say. And Biden won this state mainly due to the fact that he got higher turnout among African-American voters, in which Trump's going to probably get nearly 20 points according to the polls. This is not my opinion, but according to the polls, Trump is cracking almost 20 points among black support overall, which may seem low, but it's definitely enough to flip a state like Georgia. And if Biden does not hold up to his numbers and the Atlanta metropolitan area, the suburbs here, it is an easy flip for Donald Trump. And also, Brian Kemp had an amazing victory against Stacey Abrams in the 2022 midterms, and he is keeping his relationships with Trump pretty good right now, so I think that can also come in handy for Donald Trump. It'll help him in the long run. And then moving on to the lean states, I think in the scenario, if Republicans on election day had a landslide or a dream victory that ended up being real, I do think Trump is going to win Arizona by a lean margin of somewhere in between 4 to 5 maybe percentage points, which is actually in line with majority of polling. Trump is winning this state on average by nearly 5 percentage points, which it underestimated him 4 years ago. So maybe that margin would actually increase, believe it or not. And then realistically, and then also Nevada is getting a really red state. It's trending to the right, even though Arizona is a left trendy state. Still, most polls say Donald Trump is going to easily flip back this state. And it's another border state just like in Texas, so I do think that the issue of immigration alone could impact this race, affect it in favor of Donald Trump. It will negatively impact Joe Biden. But we go back to Nevada. I think Trump might flip Reno-Washoe County in northwestern Nevada. I think that would be very important. And Hispanic votes will be key to a Trump victory in the state. And if Trump is able to wind down Biden's support and Democratic stronghold, Clark County or the Vegas area, which is basically the only thing holding Trump back from actually winning the state, which is basically the Vegas Strip. That's literally it. Because anywhere else in Nevada is pretty much, every other county is pretty much very pro-Trump, besides the Vegas area, which is basically where everybody is across the state, because it's so populated. I also do think that the Rust Belt state of Wisconsin, believe it or not, will be lean for the former president. He should win it by somewhere in between 1 to 2 percentage points. This state was actually the closest Rust Belt state, or the reddest of them all, back in 2020. Biden only won it by 20,000 votes, a less of a margin than Trump did in 2016, actually, by 0.6%. So a tilt margin of under a percentage point, yeah, I definitely see Trump flipping this. I think he can run up the numbers in Green Bay, strong Republican counties. And if Biden does not hold up his numbers in Milwaukee, I think he's probably going to lose the state. And if the Republican Party on Election Day woke up and had an amazing Trump landslide victory, basically their dream scenario, I think Trump might be able to win Minnesota by under a percentage point really close, as well as New Hampshire, by probably within 0 to 1% at the end of the day. This state, New Hampshire, is a very anti-incumbent state, and Joe Biden happens to be the incumbent, so it's probably going to favor the challenger, Donald Trump. So that alone can already sway the race in favor of the former president. As well as Virginia, if Trump does end up picking Glenn Youngkin as his VP, because there are rumors, because Trump is going to have Glenn Youngkin at his rally in Virginia the day after the first debate against Joe Biden, believe it or not, at June 28th, I believe. I do think that may put Virginia in play, and recent polling shows it a dead tie, which is not good news for Joe Biden, considering that he won the state by literally 10 points just 4 years ago, and all of a sudden, Trump is now in play to win this state. And now I do think Trump is more favorable now than where he was 4 years ago, because we don't have COVID. Obviously, Trump is facing the outlash as well as BLM. Biden had that momentum going back in 2020. And also, we don't have the major celebrity endorsements in favor of Biden. A lot of them actually regret endorsing him publicly. They stated that. A lot of them won't. Or some maybe actually endorse Donald Trump. And also, we have more third-party candidates now, but Trump was limited because we didn't back in 2020. And the third-party candidates actually helped Trump win back the Rust Belt. For example, Jill Stein in 2016. Now we have RFK, which can actually go in favor of Donald Trump even more than somebody like Jill Stein. And recent polling in the state of Minnesota actually shows Trump can possibly win the state. He was up by like 1 to 2% of recent polling, which is not good news for Joe Biden, considering that he won the state by 7 points 4 years ago, on top of the BLM momentum. So considering that he does not have the BLM momentum, which really pushed those suburbs here to the left in Minneapolis, I think this state can get scary close in 2024, ultimately at the end of the day. And then as for the two most important Rust Belt states before we end off this video, Michigan and Pennsylvania, I think both of them would go to Donald Trump, and a Republican landslide scenario, or Trump landslide, or an ideal Republican dream scenario in this year's election, I think Michigan would go to Trump by probably 1%, considering that Donald Trump actually received more votes in the primaries than Joe Biden, and he faced Nikki Haley, a real opponent. Meanwhile, on the other end, Joe Biden had no primary contest challenger, and still, somehow, as an incumbent, received less votes than the former president, Donald Trump, on top of the 100,000 people that already voted uncommitted in the Democratic primaries. It goes to show you that Joe Biden does not have the enthusiasm in the state of Michigan as he did 4 years ago. And then Pennsylvania, I do think because this is Biden's home state, he probably does have somewhat of an advantage, but it's not going to be enough. I think Trump could flip Erie County and very important, and I think he can run up the numbers in Centray. And if Biden does not hold up to his numbers in Northampton, it only went to him by like 0.7%. That county is probably going to flip to Trump. And if he does not hold up to his numbers in some of these stronghold Democratic counties like Philadelphia and the Pittsburgh suburbs, the suburbs here are very important for a Biden victory, or even key to a Trump victory as well. I think this election is also going to come down to suburban women. I think issues like abortion could matter, but this is not a midterm. This is a general election. So issues like the economy, inflation, and the border crisis matter way more than other issues like that. And Biden only won this state by 1.2% to exact, a margin of 81,000 votes, so I think it's very flippable for the former president, Donald Trump. And now to get these districts out of the way before I end off this video, I do think because we have a large third-party vote share in this election, independent candidates tend to do well in the state of Maine, so I think RFK can take away a lot of votes from Biden. And so with that being said, Maine's at large, instead of safe for Biden, I think it would actually drop down to likely, or maybe even lean for Joe Biden. And if Trump's lucky enough in an ideal Republican landslide dream dream scenario for this election. Nebraska's second would be tilt for Donald Trump, even though it's supposed to go to Joe Biden in any other scenario. So 340 electoral votes for Donald Trump to Joe Biden's 198, which would send him off to retirement if this dream scenario for Republicans on election day were to actually happen. Let me know your overall thoughts on the map, what states you agree with or disagree with and why. Comment section down below. And one last final reminder before I end off this video is to subscribe as we are approaching 3,000 and click the bell so you don't miss out on any of my content. Also, we have memberships. You can find a link to that in the description section. And don't forget to press the like button, give this video a thumbs up. That's pretty much it. Thank you everyone for watching.